Power Blade, released in 1991 by Taito for the Nintendo Entertainment System and developed by Natsume. You know, those folks who made Scat. 'Cause that's funny. For some people, at least. Power Blade is essentially a reworking or reimagining of a 1990 Famicom release called Power Blazer, which featured a Mega Man-esque character running through levels tossing boomerangs at enemies. One could easily assume that this is a mere hatchet job with minor tweaks similar to how Nintendo took Doki Doki Panic and turned it into Super Mario Bros. 2 with some graphical and minor gameplay changes, but that's not necessarily the case here. Power Blade isn't just a reskinned Power Blazer. It practically guts the original game with a major overhaul to the point where it almost feels like a different and arguably far better game than what came before. And yes, I did play the original Power Blazer. The differences are night and day, and that's about as far as I'll go with that game. Let's stick with the superior title. The story of Power Blade, because you really need to know the story here, is that Earth in the future was living the peaceful life until the master computer that keeps the peace goes haywire and wreaks havoc everywhere. So now it's up to Nova and his badass boomerang known as the Power Blade to shut down the master computer. To do this, he needs to venture through 6 designated sectors, seek out the informants who will give him keycards, and use those keycards to challenge the boss of each sector. Beat the boss, and Nova will disarm the sector. Disarm all 6 sectors, and you get to face off against the master computer in the final stage. Sounds good enough for me, so let's get into it. So upon starting the game and picking your level of difficulty, Power Blade starts off with this stage select screen. You know, like that game there. There's no specific order to go through that will give you any advantage or anything, no weapons or upgrades to acquire. You just pick your stages, you beat them bit by bit, and eventually challenge the final level once the initial 6 are cleared. In each level you have 2 objectives that you have to accomplish. Find the informant hidden within the level, and eventually find and defeat the boss. Each level has an informant that you need to find so that he or she will give you an access card so that you can unlock the boss door when you come across that. Defeat the boss and the level is cleared. Pretty straightforward goals, even the levels themselves are not. See, each level in Power Blade is a maze, open-ended and all that stuff. So there's no single path to your goals, but rather multiple paths to set goals. This encourages exploration and getting lost and stuff. Well, not so much the getting lost part, because the levels aren't that massive and quite frankly, not that deep, but still. Opening the levels up a bit gives the player an opportunity to explore his surroundings. Sure, you could just go for the primary objectives, but search around and you'll also find an energy tank that can be used as a reserve to restore health in a crucial battle. You know, like that game there. As well as a power suit that will enhance your attack power and deck you out in sweet armor that will protect Nova from damage for 3 hits. If you're good, this will last you a good while, and if not, well, Nova's gonna be left to his own devices, it seems. Fortunately, Nova is no two-way wonder. As a master of the Power Blade, Nova can toss his signature boomerang not only left or right, but also upwards and downwards and diagonally as well. That gives you 8 whole directions to shoot at. And while your boomerang does have a limited range at first, picking up power-ups dropped by defeated enemies will enhance the range of your attacks, the number of boomerangs you could toss at a time, and even its destructive power. It isn't long before you can bring Nova to full power, but be careful. If you lose a life, your abilities get downgraded a bit, and if you lose all your lives, the game ends. On the one hand, you have unlimited continues and a straightforward password system to help you fight another day. On the other hand though, using these options resets Nova back to basics, but considering how easy it is to build back your power, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Power Blade offers 2 difficulty modes, a normal mode and an expert mode for those who need a little more of a challenge. This basically reduces your time limit and even gives Nova a bit of knockback among other things. But otherwise, Power Blade is a moderately challenging game. The levels are somewhat vast and there's plenty of ground to cover in order to seek your objectives and other helpful tools. There are some platforming bits that require a bit of precision jumping, some enemies can give you a bit of trouble in your weaker state, there are some choice placement in crushers, and in a nod to that game there, those goddamn disappearing blocks rear their ugly heads to make Nova's mission miserable. Once Nova's at full power, however, enemies can be cut up like butter and even boss battles become more of a minor inconvenience than a full-on massacre. It makes life easier, perhaps a bit too easy for some players, but there's a satisfaction to be had in cutting up big bads in seconds flat. and part of it is due to Power Blade's superb controls. It is as simple and straightforward as any competent side-scroller on the NES would be, and it works exceptionally well with virtually no lag and response time. The versatility of the Power Blade, being able to throw it in multiple directions as well as the effectiveness of the weapon, makes it such an enjoyable tool of destruction to work with. And just the fact that it hits both when thrown and on the return trip opens up a world of possibility when you can strike multiple enemies at once or time it so that the blades hit a single foe multiple times. This much, if nothing else, makes Power Blade an enthralling little game. Picking up a power suit replaces your Power Blade with a wave attack that is nowhere near as fun to use, but it is a larger shot, hits a tad harder, and can pass through solid objects, so there are advantages to that as well, along with the 3 hits that the suit gives you to protect you. The graphics in Power Blade are crisp, bright, detailed, and clean. The Arnold-esque looking Nova is a formidable looking protagonist compared to the Rockman looking Power Blazer fellow, though the poor guy is cursed with the most awkward looking running animation in the history of running animations. Aside from that, you have a world of depth to explore in Power Blade. Whether it be slime infested tunnels or the gear infested factory segments, the decent looking waterfalls, or the battleship with cannons blazing, the enemy designs are also top-notch creations. There is of course the dreaded flicker that takes place when lots of stuff is going on. By that same token, that's perhaps the worst you'll get out of Power Blade with very few instances of slowdown. It's a great looking game on the NES that adds to the world of Power Blade, and the few cutscenes you get here are also well done. Power Blade also sports some great sound. Sound effects are as clean and as effective as you could get on the NES, with none of them dipping into the dreaded white noise territory. The soundtrack is also a superb collection of top-notch, catchy chiptunes, fitting in with the various levels you'll be traveling through, despite the fact that they were originally composed for drastically different material. But it's still good stuff, with some musical pieces almost sounding like something that would fit in nicely with a Castlevania game. And this isn't much of a coincidence. Power Blade's music was composed by Kinuyo Yamashita, aka James Banana, the same James Banana who composed the music for the original Castlevania from 1986. Some food for thought there. Power Blade is an example of an instance where a developer would take a previously released game, make some drastic tweaks and changes to the formula, and repackage it into something different, resulting in a new product that not only feels different from the original source, but also turns out to be a much better game as a result. Power Blade might not score points in originality, but that's okay because what Power Blade does, it does really, really well. The controls are tight, the gameplay is solid, the levels are sizable, the presentation is top-notch, the challenge is moderate for normal folks and cutthroat for experts, and there's some sweet chiptunes to be found here. It's a shame that Power Blade never got a re-release on the Virtual Console or anything of the sort, because this is the sort of game that's worth playing today, and even decades after its original inception, holds its own very, very well. All in all, an exceptional game on the NES that's worth at least a play or two, maybe even more.